Hello, my dear internet friends. It's lovely to see you again. Welcome to Lost Bits. We're going to dive in right away to some of the amazing facts that I turned up when I was researching this episode. It's been a huge delight. Thank you so much for joining me. By the way, I should say, if you're new here, this video that you're watching right now is a companion video to one of my main episodes on the main series here on my channel called Lost Realms. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, some of the things I talk about in this video might seem a little bit confusing or out of place. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. And that video will tell you the story of the Beothuk as best as I'm able. And then once you see it, come on back here, because this is the place where we go to talk about cool things from history that we encounter on our journey together. I want to say too, on a personal note, that covering the Beothuk was really, really important to me, and one of the things that made me want to start this channel. I'm naturally kind of a shy person, and one of my big passions in life is history. And I grew up hearing the story of the Beothuk, but the version I heard of the story was quite wrong. Every day is a chance to learn new things. Every day is a chance to discover more. And I know I'm starting to sound very sort of cliche, happy. I don't know what, but I can't apologize for it because I mean it. And it's been so healing and helpful for me to learn more about the actual past of the Beothuk. And I hope you love the main video as much as I loved making it. But enough of that, let's just dive right in, because I gotta say, there was so much cool stuff I found when researching these people. Okay, one of the first things I wanted to talk about, and that I really regret that I couldn't dive into more in the main video, is the Dorset culture, as well as a couple of other different cultures from the ancient North America region of Newfoundland and Labrador that we were covering in the video. In the second act of my video, I go through how the maritime archaic started to decline over time, and eventually they seem to have evolved and changed into the beaches and later Little Passage people. But if I'm being honest, everything I just said is a little bit up for debate. And I mentioned a group coming in called the Paleo Eskimos, which is kind of a cringy term, but it is the academically proper one, unfortunately. This term, Paleo Eskimo, can apply to a bunch of different ancient First Nations from Canada, one of which was the Dorset, another would be the Thule, and there were a couple others, and I would have really, really loved to dive into more of their history in the history of Canada and in Newfoundland. But one thing I really struggled with, and something I mentioned in the main episode, is that this sort of chunk of our ancient history, especially around 3,000 to 2,000 years ago in Newfoundland, is kind of patchy. Is that the right way? I don't know how to put this. We need to learn a lot more. We know very little. Part of this is actually due to Newfoundland itself. Newfoundland has really acidic soil, so a lot of human remains break down quite quickly over time. And this is also, unfortunately, I feel, due to some of the racist attitudes that early colonizers had against the Indigenous people of Canada. You know, we talked in the episode about some people trying to help the Beothuk, but even then it was usually ineffective or misguided. A lot of the first settlers didn't really care for them all that much at all, as we've talked about. So, you know, treating the artifacts they came across with care might not have been a huge priority to them. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum where we see the literal human remains of Damastuit and her husband being shipped off. Anyway, that's a whole other enraging kettle of fish. But my point is, the history of the Indigenous people of Canada has not always been as highly regarded or viewed as important as it should be. And that, combined with Newfoundland's already naturally acidic soils, as I mentioned, can make reconstructing a historical picture of that time period really hard for us right now. But hopefully that will change over time. And I would love to actually down the road to do an episode proper each on both the Dorset and the Thule, and to be honest, a bunch of other ancient Indigenous cultures. So keep an eye out for those too, because I'm pretty sure I've got them in me and they're coming. One other topic that's particularly painful to discuss and hard to discuss is the topic of Indigenous slavery. I think most often when we think of just the concept of slavery in North America, we tend to think of the horrible treatment of African people being brought over here. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of that at all. But in Canada especially, the vast majority of the first enslaved peoples there were indigenous people, not people of African descent. And in the main episode, you hear me refer to Beothuk being captured and used as slaves or servants. And I put servants in quotes because really, if you're being captured and given to someone else as a servant, then you're not really a proper paid servant, now are you? And there's some really early evidence of this happening with what could be our Beothuk people as early as 1501. There's stories of some indigenous people being taken and sold in Europe, I believe in Portugal. I'll put links down to all this stuff below, but it's really saddening and it's really upsetting. But I think it's important that we talk about because it is a part of our collective human history. And if I'm being honest, just because I don't think that we talk about it enough. When we talk about the pain that the indigenous people of North America have suffered, I don't think we think of reservations, which are horrible, residential schools, horrible, lots of horrible things come to mind, but I don't feel like this particular pain is something that's discussed all that often, and especially in Canada, it's something that went on for hundreds of years. So I just, I hope that as time moves on, we can also learn more about this unpleasant part of our history. And as awful as it is, I hope it's something that we can face more directly. Okay, so after that very, very sad topic, we'll end on a high note because I wanted to say, literally, as I was editing the main episode, I found a news article that I somehow missed during my research. And I found out that very, very recently, I believe this year, 2024, they have finished a statue of Damastuit, and look at this now. Look at our beautiful married couple. Look at this. This isn't, where is this? Hang on. I gotta get the name right. This is not at our Beothuk Lake. This is not at our Beothuk Lake. I'll be honest about that, but it is in Newfoundland. Botwood is the name of the town that it's in. And look how beautiful they look. This makes me so happy. And I think they're still working on that memorial center I told you about. This is not where that will be, but it is in traditional Beothuk territory. And I just think it's so beautiful to see them like this. And I'm just so happy. So let's hope they get the memorial center done soon too. I'll update for pictures of that. Look at that. Make me so happy. You can see and the view and the nice and it's I will say I hope this doesn't discourage them from putting another statue at the memorial center. We can have more than one set of statues, okay? Like no one's putting a limit. Throw me as many statues as you got. I'm hungry for them. Give them to me. Let me see more of these wonderful people. This is lovely. And on a high note, like you said, this is great. Okay. Thank you so much for being here, both for Lost Bits and for the story of the Beothuk. I'm so grateful. For our next episode, we're going to be going across the water over to Europe for a very similar time period, but for a very different set of circumstances. For the first time in Lost Realms history, which is actually, I've only been posting videos for a few weeks, but for the first time in Lost Realms history, we're going to be covering a natural disaster. And I don't mean to make light of it, actually, because it was a particularly horrible one that occurred in the Middle Ages in Europe, as I said, in the Low Countries. And it's a story of death and destruction, but also of learning and growth and inspiration. And on one hand, it's a particularly dark part of our history, but it's also a beautiful one. So hopefully I'll see you there. It'll be up in about 2 days. I can't wait to share it with you all. But either way, be safe. Be happy. Go with all my love. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.